Now we move ahead to the uh, awaited program, Meena Dhamija oration. And for that, I'll invite the chairpersons, our past president now, Dr. Amitabh Verma, Dr. S.S. Chabda, current president, Professor Devashish Chaudhary, and Professor Madhuri Bihari. I request Dr. Devashish Chaudhary to start the session. Thank you.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are now due for this very important part of the DNACon, Meena Dhamija oration. The orator is very, very well-known and very erudite orator, Professor Kalyan Bhattacharya from Kolkata. And he is going to talk on the tortuous journey in search of a miracle. So may I request Dr. Madhuri Bihari to kindly invite the Dr. C.S. Narayanan, who is going to introduce the orator.
Professor Bihari, you were not audible.
Yes, I think Dr. Bihari is not audible. So may I request Dr. Chabra to kindly request the introduction of the orator.
First, let Dr. Narayan explain the oration.
Should I introduce a oration, please?
Yes, Dr. Narayan, please go ahead. Please. Introduce Dr. Bhattacharya.
It is my proud privilege and honor to speak a few words about Mrs. Meena Dhamija, wife of Dr. Colonel R.M. Dhamija, one of the most senior and revered neurologists in our fraternity. Many of us have personally known Mrs. Dhamija and are aware of her accomplishments. She was born and brought up in an army family background and worked as a social worker from a very young age. One of the most important quotes from her personal diary reads as, "Help always, hurt never." With this vision and motto, Mrs. Dhamija worked tirelessly for the upliftment of poor children and society at large. She initially devoted her time to teaching children of soldiers and armed forces schools and later contributed as principal of the base hospital welfare school in the Delhi camp. In addition to this responsibility, she was ever willing to support needy patients and their families in the garrison and beyond. Mrs. Dhamija was a religious and pious lady who donned the role of a supportive wife, mother, and grandmother, besides being a warm friend to one and all with utmost dedication. All of us knew her for her selfless love, and she was innocent and a noble soul with an incomparable sensitivity towards human beings. Meenaji always aimed for perfection at work, but had a calm and magnetic personality. She was able to establish a special bond with every person that she came across. An avid reader, she used to collect religious quotation verses, and she was now ardent admirer of nature and used to exude peace and happiness. I will end with another quote from her diary, which reads, "Blessed are pure in the heart, and for they shall see God." This oration is in the loving memory of Mrs. Dhamija, who prematurely left for her heavenly abode in the prime of her youth on the 29th of June, 2002. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Narayan. Now, may I request Dr. Achal Srivastav to kindly introduce our famous speaker, Professor Kalyan Bhattacharya from Kolkata. Dr. Achal, please.
Yes, sir. I feel proud and privileged to introduce Professor Kalyan Bhattacharya. He is formerly head Department of Neuromedicine, R.G. Kar Medical College and Hospital, West Bengal. Currently, he is advisor, Department of Neurology, Medica Super Specialty Hospital, Calcutta. His areas of interest include, of course, everyone knows it, movement disorders, behavioral neurology, history of medicine. But apart from that, he had subject of great passion, and that is Indian classical music, ghazals and golden songs of those 50s and 70s in Hindi and Bengali, and Western classical music. So everyone remembers him because of all these credentials. He has been a very academic man. He has earned 5 gold medals, Goodyear Scholarship, other prizes, his scholarship as medical student. In 1993, He was placed as clinical assistant, Institute of Neurology, Queen Square, London. In 1998, he was elected member, Association of British Neurologists, member of National Academy of Medical Science, and member of Alumni Association, Queen Square, London. In 2011, he was elected fellow of Royal College of Physicians, Edinburgh. In 2012, he was appointed visiting professor, King's College, London. He was invited by King's College, London to talk on spinocerebellar ataxias in India and Radcliffe. He was infirmary, Radcliffe Infirmary and Wandham College, and he had a talk on movement disorders in India. And then in 2013, he was elected fellow of Indian Academy of Neurology. He has been editor of History section of Movement Disorders, Journal of International Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorders. He has been invited speaker at Mansell Bickers Symposium on History of British Movement Disorders, which was organized by Medical Society of London in 1998. He has paper published in the book History of British Neurology, edited by Clifford Rose. He is member of International Faculty of King's College, Guy's Hospital, and St. Thomas Medical School, London. He has been invited speaker and chairperson in annual congresses of World Federation of Neurology, International Association of Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorders, International Association of Parkinson's Disease and Related Disorders, Asian-Oceanian Congress of Neurology, Asia-Oceanian Congress of Movement Disorders, International Congress of Neurobiology, and other international conferences. He has been a member of Scientific Committee for various international conferences on movement disorders. He has been past member of Archives subsection, International Movement Disorder Society. He has been member of Program Committee, International Association of Parkinson's Disease and Related Disorders. He has been member of and Organizing Committee, Neurology Section, International Meeting of Royal College of Physicians, Edinburgh in 2016. He has been actually organizing secretary, and everyone remembers this conference, which was held in 2016 in Calcutta, Annual Conference of Indian Academy of Neurology. He has been convener of Continuing Medical Education, Neurology India since 2006 to 2008, Indian Academy of Neurology again 2015 to 2017. He has been past president of Movement Disorder Society of India since 2018 to 19, past president Association of Neuroscientists of Eastern India 2014 to 15. He has been founding member of Movement Disorder Society of India and member Governing Council, Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorder Society of India. He has been founding member of Movement Disorder Society of India and member Governing Council, Parkinson's Disease and Movement Disorder Society of India. He has conducted researches on Parkinson's disease funded by DST, Government of West Bengal. He has been invited by ICMR to conduct researches on Parkinson's disease and sleep disorders. He has been peer reviewer for 11 national and international index journals. He has been member, advisor, co-editor, and on the editorial board of 8 national and international index journals. He has been member of 10 national and international neurological societies. He has more than 120 publications in peer-reviewed journals, national and international volumes. He has been author, editor of 7 books. He has been examiner for DM, PhD in various universities in India and DNB for National Board of Examination, UPSC, Medical Council of India, National Board of Examiners, and also he was examiner at our place a few years back. He has been advisor and editorial board member, Oxford University Press, Cambridge Scholars Publishing, JP Publishing House, Bentham Publishing House. He has been advisor in NINELS of Indian Academy of Neurology. He has been member of Specialty Board Neurology, National Board of Examinations. And apart from all this, he has a lot of extracurricular, all his friends know. He has been a television and radio commentator on cricket. He had contributed in sports magazine, vernacular and English newspapers, books and websites, and which I told earlier of his great passion in Indian classical music, ghazals, old Bengali and Hindi songs. Here you see him in cricket gear in late 70s as an undergraduate student. And here again, you see him in various moods. but I could not find a picture where he was actually singing. Although I have seen him many times singing, many of you must have seen him and heard him. This is, here we see him with his better half. Thank you.
So may I request Professor Kalyan Bhattacharya to kindly start his oration, please. Sir.
Achal, please do the slide sharing for me, as I told you.
Yes, sir.
Respected chairpersons, particularly Professor Madhuri Behari, I always call Madhuri, and all our lives, as I said in my presidential oration for MDSI, we have always enjoyed good-humored banter. And Debashish, I think he gets a chance to speak in Bengali whenever he meets me in the national or other meetings. Otherwise, he can't speak in Bengali. He's a Bengali but never studied in West Bengal. All the venerable audience, and particularly Professor Gauri Devi, I know she's here. You see, I'm delighted and I'm obliged to be invited for this very, very prestigious oration. Meena Dhamija oration. I read about her services for the common people, children, army because of her wedding connections with the Colonel R.M. Dhamija, so on and so forth. So it's indeed a great privilege to be able to deliver this oration. Now, whenever I speak, be it a seminar, be it a symposium, be it an oration here or abroad, my friends always expect me to touch upon the historical part of something. And I presume that was also the desire of most of the people who are sitting here, my friends. So I have chosen a topic of that nature, and I have a feeling that by now you have already got a hang of the subject that I'm going to discuss. I'm just trying to share the skin, but I'm not very good at that. So let me see if I can do that. Otherwise, Achal will have to do that for me. Yes, I can't because, well, other participant is sharing. So Achal, please do that for me.
Yes, sir.
You see, no. This was in animation. You can't you enlarge it?
Okay.
There are few things are in animation. If you can, otherwise I don't mind. If you can't, I don't mind. There's no big problem.
I tried, sir. It's not happening.
It's not happening? Yeah, it is happening now. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a miracle. In neurology, there are a few medicines which are virtually miracles. And one such is levodopa, which is obviously, because of my intense interest in movement disorders, very, very close to my heart. And I'm going to tell you the very tortuous, at times the tortuous became tedious journey for a very, very long time. Next slide, please. You see, it dates back to 1,500 to 1,000 before Christ in the Indian Ayurvedic system of medicine. Now, as is the rule in our country, we are great for forgetting our own past. In the process, we lost track of what we did. And we depend entirely on the Western world for whatever they discover, whatever they suggest, but we have to take it. This is one prime example. Plant Mucuna pruriens, often known as the velvet bean, is a climbing legume. It was cultivated not only in eastern India, that means the part of the country I come from, and southern China. And it contains many components. Some of those are toxic. For instance, it contains phenol. But most importantly, it contains levodopa in the range of 5% and was used long ago in the management of Parkinson's disease. Next one. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's the climbing legume I told you, the velvet beans. And to the right are the actual beans that look almost like coffee beans. They contain 5% of levodopa. Next one, please. Now, in the Ayurvedic concepts, this I have actually borrowed from an article which was published by Professor Gauri Devi in the Proceedings of the Royal Society of Medicine, 1991, I presume, yes. It was a magnificent paper which helped me a lot. And as a matter of fact, I am now into the detailed aspect of it. I'm collecting the references now, which I'm been asked by the Movement Disorder Journal to present the Indian aspect of this Parkinson's disease management. It will be an onerous task, I know, but I've undertaken it. You see, the Ayurvedic medicine is conceived of the human body as an amalgam of three basic elements: Vata, which controls the brain and the mind; Pitta, that's bile, of course, we all know, for digestive system and metabolism; and Kapha, which is cough for growth. Now, there is a term, Kampa Vata. Kampa, we all know, is tremor. And it's due to Vata, or problems in the brain. And that's how the Ayurvedic, the rishis, they conceived of the disease. And the features largely resemble those of Parkinson's disease, as was described in the last 1817, first described, 1817, yes, the last 203 years ago by James Parkinson of Hoxton Square in London. His house, unfortunately, has now become a nightclub. I had been to his house once. Now, that time, there was reference to Vishada, that's depression. And now we know that it's a very important component, part of the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, and it may even antedate Parkinson's disease. And myself being very much interested in the non-motor aspects of it and being a member of the non-motor group of Parkinson's, we have seen many, many cases, and I'm sure all of you have seen cases of coming to you as depression. A little bit of examination shows bradykinesia, rigidity, maybe a bit of resting tremor, so on and so forth. But this was already alluded to 1,500 years ago. And that really takes my breath away. Next one. Now, there was a lull. We were separated from the rest of the world for various reasons: political, social, historical, economic, and whatnot. I will not go to that. But in the Western world, levodopa business started. I always call it levodopa business in the year 1913, when there will be an animated photograph here if you can. There will be a photograph here. Please double click it. Yeah. This gentleman, it seems to me that he was blind in his right eye. Marcus Guggenheim from Sweden. He isolated levodopa in the year 1913. Next one, but it was Casimir Funk of Poland who isolated 2 years before him, but his name is somehow suppressed. The credit goes to Guggenheim, who thought that it was a forerunner of adrenaline and a precursor of melanin. This melanin and Parkinson itself is the topic, which can take about 20-25 minutes talk. I'm not going to that today. And he worked for the Roche company at Basel. What he did, he consumed it himself, and he vomited violently. And we all know that levodopa, which is to be basically given before meals, I advise them to take 1 hour before meals, and of course I forewarn them that in case you start vomiting, then take it at least 1 hour after meals, but never mix it with food because it will not be absorbed. He himself vomited violently. And so disgusted he was with his own drug that he shelved the idea. Later, he wrote a magnificent treatise, De Biogenin Nemine. I couldn't read it because of the language problem. And he devoted only 2 pages in his own volume about his own discovery. Next one, please. Now, by that time, Sir Henry Dale, the Nobel laureate in 1936, along with Otto Loewi, for the discovery of acetylcholine, and the name was actually given by Sir Henry Dale, one of the greatest pharmacologists of all time in the world, he gave the name dopamine, and Peter Holt from Germany, in the meantime, isolated dopa decarboxylase, Asama from Japan, and only Hori Quicks, I will come to that. He himself is a chapter in 1956 alluded to the very common, troublesome postural hypertension, which we all see in our day-to-day practice. And Raab from Germany identified a catecholamine-like substance in the human brain in 1951. The actual story hasn't yet started, and it will start now. The next slide, please. And a photo, please. This man from Sweden, I have the privilege of meeting him. David Marsden wrote somewhere that Parkinson's disease before Carlson and after Carlson is not the same disease. The reason is he is the man who is the most important person in the entire research on dopamine. He lived for a long time, 95 years. What happened? What did he do? Next slide, please. You see, he was working basically as a cardiology fellow to Bernard Brodie, a very, very famous pharmacologist at Bethesda, USA, Washington, and was investigating the antihypertensive action of reserpine. Now, doctors of my generation, and of course the previous generation, which includes Professor Gauri Devi, we know we used reserpine in the 1970s, of course from the 60s or whatever, up to the 80s as an antihypertensive drug. It was known as Adolphine, but it is no longer available. Sometimes it was combined with hydrochlorothiazide as Adolphine Acidrex, but it led to severe depression. And by that time we investigated and we found out many new antihypertensive drugs, and this drug was totally put out of practice. But what Carlson observed was reserpine lowered the serotonin level in the brain. And he thought that the hypotensive action of reserpine was due to serotonin. He thought it to be catecholinergic as well. And he suggested something to Brodie, which I will tell you later, but he returned to Sweden in 1957 to the University of Lund, and he worked there as a professor for the rest of his life. And he observed something, and that is the reserpine depleted the catecholamines in the brain in rabbits. And the clinical picture in the rabbits closely resembled that of Parkinsonism, which was quickly reversed with the levodopa, but not so with 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is the precursor of serotonin. This is a very, very fundamental discovery, as we shall see. Next slide, please. Double click, please. Now, this is perhaps the most talked about and the most discussed photograph in the history of movement disorder study. The above two rabbits are reserpinized. They are lethargic, immobile, almost dead. But the lower two are just given an injection of dopamine. And you see how lively they are, how bright they are. This is the first ever photograph of how levodopa changes the clinical picture. Next one, please. Carlson himself wrote, I submitted in 1957 to Nature his observations, and the paper was accepted. However, the picture was not published because the referee didn't consider its publication necessary. And the earliest publication of the picture is probably the one to be found in the proceedings of a meeting as late as in 1960. Next one. Carlson measured the dopamine in normal brain, and he observed a very high level in the striatum, and he concluded that reserpine depleted the dopamine, which led to his rabbits, the Parkinsonian picture, and he implicated this dopamine for the genesis of Parkinson's disease, and he presented his monumental paper. I just had the good fortune of reading the paper with great difficulty on the biochemistry and possible functions of dopamine and noradrenaline in the brain in the CIBA Foundation Symposium in London in 1960. But The reception was absolutely lukewarm. Nobody paid any heed, any attention to whatever he said, as we shall see. Next one, please. Next one. Even a person of the stature of, I think I've skipped one slide. Yes, Sir Henry Dale was not convinced about Carlson's observations. He commented, dopamine has not yet fulfilled the criterion for a neurotransmitter. The actions were possibly attributable to levodopa, a mysterious brain toxin. And when combined with a MAO inhibitor, led to excitation, and be careful, could be even lethal. So he repudiated the idea of this to be used as a medicine. Next one. By that time, Hillop, Aka Hillop, we shall come to him again. He was a kind of a mentor for Carlson in later life. From Sweden, he confirmed the localization of monoamines in the brain. And Carlson, in the meantime, watched a film which depicted the results of the low and slow increment of levodopa by one of the greatest persons in the field of movement disorders, George Cousias, in New York. And he was very impressed, and he met Albert Swanborg, who was a geriatrician, and they could prove the dramatic results of the use of levodopa in severely handicapped patients as a last measure, because we had at that time nothing except the anticholinergics. Next one. Double click. I suggest you just go 2 slides ahead. There's a little bit of a problem, it's my mistake in arrangement. Next one. Next one. Next one. Yes. Next one, please. Yes. Now the issue was getting really muddled. Carlson was not being accepted. So he wrote to Hillop, who acquired an instrument, spectrophotofluorimeter, which was a very expensive instrument in those days, in order to visualize the localization of the cellular biogenic amines. And he presented his paper on the biochemistry and pharmacology meeting of the basal ganglia in New York in 1965. He proposed, this is a very important statement, that the dopa-containing cell bodies were localized in the substantia nigra, which spread fibers to the caudate nucleus and the putamen. And he was supported by 2 neuroanatomists, Soaks and Poirier from France, who showed that if you lesion the substantia nigra in animals, there was Parkinsonism, and they measured the levodopa in the brain, it was reduced. Now, please go back. I'm sorry, you just go back 3 slides. Previous one. Previous one. Double click, please. Thus, Carlson's lifelong conviction, despite continual resistance, the loss of dopamine was the fundamental problem in the genesis of Parkinson's, was vindicated by the improvement of the clinical status of the patients with the administration of dopamine, which the 2 French neuroanatomists could establish. Next slide. In the year 2014, the annual conference of the MDS was held in Sweden at Stockholm, where Carlson gave the inaugural lecture. I was fortunate and privileged to be there, and I saw him, I met him. This was the last slide of his talk. Do not give in, stick it out, because that was his lifelong experience. He had to fight it out in order to prove a point. And he received the Nobel Prize for his discovery in the year 2000. Next one. In his Nobel lecture, he said, I came to work under Brody, who made a breakthrough discovery. That's the administration of reserpine, caused disappearance of serotonin from the brain and other tissues. At that time, he proposed to Brody that we investigate the effect of reserpine on the catecholamines. But Brody thought that this would be a waste of time. So I wrote to Neil Hill-up, I told you, was another mentor, and he agreed. And we demonstrated the depletion of catecholamines from the adrenal medulla of the rabbits following treatment with reserpine. We gave dopa to these treated animals and thus discovered the traumatic response. Next one. Next one, we already discussed this. Yes. Double click. Now comes the next person, Ole Honigwix, in the footsteps of Arvid Carlsson from Austria. Next one. Honigwix was slightly younger to Carlsson. He studied in Oxford, returned to Vienna in 1958, and one of his associates was Herbert Ehringer, and he ventured to study the dopamine content in the brain, of course, in Parkinson's disease, post-encephalitic Parkinson, Huntington's disease, and the normal population. And he observed that it was very, very low in PD and post-encephalitic, but there was no change in Huntington. And he is the first person to suggest that in the ventral tier of the substantia nigra, there's an 80% reduction has to take place in order to produce symptoms. But this was later verified by some brilliant work by two scientists, Baxter and Olszewski of Steele-Richardson-Olszewski syndrome. And I tell you, in case any of you are not aware of it, in the last 3 years, there are a number of papers coming out which suggesting that even 30% reduction of the cells in substantia nigra can lead to PD signs. Now, Derek Denny Brown from Boston and somebody else, an anatomist, repudiated his claims. Now, I heard from Professor Mark Hallett that Derek Denny Brown was an extremely difficult man to get along with. He never tolerated any new idea from anybody else. And he was so dominating and domineering in his attitude that he used to feel that whatever he said is only correct, anything else is false. He couldn't accept Honigwix's ideas, and he denounced even the idea that there could be an ascending nigrostriatal pathway. So it's glimpses of Carlsson's fate being criticized, not accepted. Next one. Honigwix collected levodopa from Alfred Pletcher, and he urged upon Walter Berkner. Berkner is a very controversial person. He was part of Hitler's Nazi party, euthanasia, so on and so forth, very controversial. I'm not going to that. And he carried out a trial on 20 patients of PD and post-encephalitis. From Roche Company, they procured levodopa, and the next line is of extreme importance, injected in incremental dosage, 50, then 100, and then 150 milligrams. In the third group, there was a marked improvement in hypokinesia. And by 1964, the results showed that about 20% of the patients, there was a lasting relief for about 3 hours. Next one, please. This is a paper which Honigwix wrote in the year 2010, I presume, yes. He wrote that bedridden patients who could not stand up when seated or when standing could not start moving performed these activities with ease. The drug worked from the very first dose, and the beneficial action from bradykinesia was reported to last from 3 to 24 hours. Incontrovertible evidence that this drug works, yet not accepted at that time in the 1960s. Next one, please. Now, see the responses to Honigwix's work, how acerbic, how barbed the comments could be. Derek Denny Brown said, "You have presented reasons against that common assumption that lesions in substantia nigra are responsible for Parkinsonism." Hassler, an anatomist, he said something, and I was, yes, Mettler said that such a small homogeneous structure can't produce such a diverse clinical picture. It's impossible. The next one. Next one. And I was really surprised to see that Jasper, Herbert Jasper, who is mostly connected with epilepsy, also had something to say. And look at the comment, how ridiculing he was. Levodopa is the right therapy for the wrong reason. And even Carlsson, who had to meet such fate of being harshly criticized was not lagging behind. He said, not possible to draw any conclusion about the relative importance of dopamine for the central effect. But that's precisely what he was trying all around. And de Beaussin, American fellow, one of the early fellows of David Marsden, he is from Chicago, he wrote that despite enthusiastic claims of therapeutic benefit, no evidence has been presented that dopa effects are in any way specific. Next. Double click. So now the matter was getting so convoluted that in 1965, even Hornickwicz, like Guggenheim, had to concede that possibly L-DOPA did not have a potential future. Next. Next. But Hornickwicz had the last laugh. He said one would have expected unanimous support. This was indeed the case with the vast majority of the clinicians, but not at all the rule amongst the basic workers, among those strongly critical of DA and levodopa, but the best minds of the contemporary neuroscience. He was pained, he was hurt, the way he was attacked. Next one. Now, this is a very important slide. It's a glaring omission. When in 2000, Carlson got the Nobel Prize for his Reserpine and rabbits, which you have seen, and the reversal, Hornickwicz was ignored. And 250 eminent neurologists wrote to the Nobel Committee expressing their utter exasperation. This is not done. You can't exclude him. But Hornickwicz politely said, now Hornickwicz was a very, very humorous person. After he died in the COVID year, last year, November, Ali Rajput from Saskatoon, his fellow, he wrote an article, an obituary. He was a very polite man, very funny man, fun-loving man rather. He stated politely that scientists take to investigative studies not in order to win prizes or to receive universal recognition. They just work in order to find out the truth. However, he regretted that the Nobel Committee was terribly amiss in their assessment that Carlson discovered low dopamine content in the brain in PD. No, never. That was never the intention of Carlson. Carlson's only intention was the Reserpine, Parkinsonism production, a reversal with dopamine. It was only Hornickwicz who showed us that in Parkinson's disease, the dopamine content in the substantia nigra is low. And he was ignored, not given the prize. Next one, it happens. Next one. Next, yes. But now we come to the actual clinical part. George Goudzias, you can see that he lived only for 59 years. He was a very, very heavy smoker, and he died of an attack of AMI in his old laboratory. Now that is perhaps a warning signal to me. This odious habit, this obnoxious habit, which I do have, I'm trying desperately to get out of it. He is the man to be remembered always for this incremental dosage of L-DOPA, which we all do. We never start with one tablet thrice daily. We start with half twice. After 2 weeks, half thrice. What I do, then half 4 times. And I tell them, look, now you are having effectively 2 tablets a day, increased to 3 tablets a day, 4 tablets, 5 tablets, whatever. In the meantime, now Stalevo has come, that is entrecapone combination. I change that. And I tell them that your urine will be colored yellow. I mean, it's an incremental way of going, not straight away, not bang. Don't fire the bullet immediately. Go slowly. Next one. What he did, in 1967, he used incremental dosage of DOPA. And the paper, a landmark paper in the entire history of movement disorders, the New England Journal, is the aromatic amino acids and the modification of Parkinsonism came out. But this is again a very important statement. His aim was not to increase the dopamine in the striatum. His conviction was that the problem in Parkinson was of that of melanin, because the substantia nigra looked black. In the Robert Wattenberg lecture in 1982 of the American Academy of Neurology, David Marsden said, I remember even now verbatim, that since his young days as a medical student, he was a bit moved to see that the substantia nigra is black. Why is it black? So he likened it to the basement of a house, which is always black. And it's because of melanin. And he said that I believed and still believe, that was in 1982. Mind you, Marsden said, I still believe that the key to Parkinson's disease is melanin. Well, what happened to that work is another story. Now, his hope was to replenish the lost melanin in substantia nigra. That's how it all started. And he himself observed this kinesias. And within 2 years, he published again in the same journal, The Complications of Levodopa Therapy. Again, like Carlson and Honigweg, he was not immediately accepted. Next one, please. Melville Yard and Roger DeVosa, two of the finest minds in Parkinson's disease in the last 50 years, they said that Coziers reported oral administration of levodopa in a very high dose. However, there had been undesirable, unacceptable side effects like nausea, vomiting, syncopal feelings. We all know this, dyskinetic movements. So undoubtedly at this dose, it had a sustained effect, but the role in treatment is far from established. None was going to buy the concept of levodopa. Next one. Coziers now presented his observations at a symposium in Montreal in 1967. And there, Carlson and Stan Farn were present. To be honest, in an international meeting, most probably in Dublin in 2013, it so happened absolutely by chance. We were taken for the cultural program in a bus, and I just happened to sit by the side of Professor Stan Farn. Now, Stan Farn, those of you who know him, is a very fatherly person, very, very fatherly person. I sat by his side. I asked him about this Honigweg, Coziers, etc., because he worked with them, he knew them, and he gave me a long story. And he said, you see, I was there when Coziers presented his paper, and Carlson was there, and they were now impressed. And DeVosa and Yar, who were critical, they shed their doubts and endorsed the therapeutic effort. And DeVosa in turn visited Coziers' lab and returned content with the results of his experiments. Now, Irving Cooper, you all know, in 1953, his neurosurgeon accidentally ligated the anterior choroidal artery, which abolished the tremor. Cooper was so impressed with Coziers' works that he said that no, for the next 1 year, don't do any surgery on my patients, just send them to George. Let him treat with medicines. This went on for a year, and by that time, levodopa was established as the drug. Next one. The last man, Melvin Yar. He is from Mount Sinai, and you all know his name because of the Horn and Yar classification. Next. He is the first person in the world to carry out a double-blind study, and I'm sure Professor Gaurudevi would be liking that very much because she's so fond of double-blind studies. I know that because of a scientific temper in her mind. Yar and his colleagues recruited 60 patients, 56 of Parkinson, 3 of post-encephalitic, because those were the post-encephalitic days still continuing of the 1970 Mexican COVID, whatever, and 1 PSP. They're hospitalized. This is the first instance where the patients were inpatients in the ward for 4 to 12 weeks. One was the placebo group, the other was the drug group. The drug group was on 5 to 10 tablets a day, and the placebo group, 1 tablet a day. The placebo received, it was reversed, and the placebo received now 0.5 gram of levodopa every 28 to 48 hours until the optimum response was observed in the placebo group. A total of 8 grams per day was administered. And when it was withdrawn rapidly, mind the word rapidly, in 9 patients and replaced by placebo, there was frank deterioration. Nothing more can prove what levodopa is or what levodopa was. and it was clinically examined by 2 observers every day. And one such observer was Margaret Hone of the Hone and Yard staging. After discharge, they were followed up for 4 to 12 months, and out of the 60, 49 showed considerable improvement, and thus the efficacy of the drug was proved incontrovertibly. No further question. Levodopa came into clinical practice in 1969 throughout the world. Next slide. Just show his. A very young, beautiful lady in those days. In the later days, of course, as age takes away everything, she was no longer like that, but I just wanted this to show. Very young lady, very young PhD fellow of Melvin Yard. She also worked in the team. Next one. Now, this is not even half the story, and I'm not going to say anything more. This is not even half the story. The late complications of levodopa and their management is itself a chapter. And the newer agents used, those in the pipeline, you see, the red ones are the ones which are already in the market, Western market. I've seen it myself being used. Ritalin is a kind of, it's something like our sustained release drug, but the sustained release drug contains, in the matrix, there are 2 kinds of levodopa. In Ritalin, there are 3 kinds of levodopa. And I'm beginning to understand that Ritalin is now going out of vogue. There are some problems with that, which I'm not very aware of. Subcutaneous and intranasal delivery is very much going on. And duodopa gel. Again, Sweden seems to be a very, very important place for Parkinson research. Per Odin is the man, a duodopa gel. He has used a lot and got very good result, but extremely expensive. I don't think it will be possible in our country. And those in blue line, the blue letters, they are in the stage 3 or whatever, that kind of trial, not yet marketed, or even if marketed, the report is lacking. Next. So isn't it a fascinating story? Isn't it at times beyond the realms of human credibility? Doesn't it take your breath away? At least it does for me. And therefore, next slide. Thank you very much for lending me your kind ears.
Thank you, Professor Kalyanamrit Bhattacharya, for a fascinating discourse on the search for a miracle drug. And it is not only a miracle drug for the researchers, it is a miracle drug for thousands and lakhs of patients who are suffering from it and who are benefiting from it. So can I now request our esteemed co-chairpersons, Professor Madhuri Bihari, because she being an expert on movement disorders, to kindly comment on your oration and then proceed with the functions of oration. Dr. Bihari, please.
What is happening, Madhuri? Again, the same problem. I can't hear you. And I really want to listen to you now. No, you were not audible.
Sushil, can you help ma'am? I think something there is wrong with the system.
Sir, there is a ma'am. There is a problem with her hardware. This is not a software because it's showing connected with audio.
Yeah, I know.
So, ma'am, can you please try to join from your phone, mobile phone?
Okay, till that time,
yes.
Dr. Amitabh Verma, please. Lieutenant General Narayan, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you for a very fascinating story. Actually, we very rarely get to hear the nitty-gritties of basic science and the history of the evolution of a drug. You took us through the journey of levodopa right from its inception, even before its inception, how it was conceptualized to how it is evolved to a magic bullet now, and the future as well. It was a really fascinating talk. And I was also fascinated by Achal's introduction about your multifarious talents, and it is a pleasure listening to you, sir. Thank you so very much for the...
Dr. Madhuri Bihari, please.
Yes, yes. Good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now of
Yes,
course.
ma'am,
And,
yes.
and I dearly want to listen to you.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening.
Good
I'm so
evening.
happy. I'm so happy that you can hear me. Yeah, as always, I loved your lecture. So fascinating and so nice. The way you speak is also very dramatic. You are, I think, Shakespearean like. I enjoyed your talk very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Chhabra, Dr. Satnam Singh Chhabra, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It was very great talk, very excellent. Really enjoyed listening to you. First time I'm hearing you. I'm being a neurosurgeon. I've never attended your lecture earlier. Very fascinating. And thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver this oration. Thank you, sir.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir. So I can only say that I have listened to so many of your orations and the dramatic flourish that you present with your orations. And of course, I am also slightly being interested in history of neurology. It is always
I know that. Not slightly, a lot actually, Debashish. A lot.
So it's always been fascinating. And how do you dig out those, details and the facts, and you take the pains of actually meeting those persons or visiting those places where the history lies. So I think you will finally, in your, now semi-retired kind of a life, you would probably write down a lot of your memoirs and, books highlighting those. And once again, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to present this prestigious oration. And now I request Dr. Achal to please, can you show the plaque to?
If I can say one word, Debashish, many of you know that you know for sure, and many others know that I wrote a book, Eminent Neuroscientists. And now I am writing a book on the Nobel laureates in neurosciences. I have just completed 7, and there are actually 31 definite neuroscientists. I'm not including Watson and Crick there, because that is too basic. But there are 31 Nobel scientists who are neuroscientists, and that's now my onerous task and writing of them. And Professor Gauradevi will be fascinated to know, I'm sure, because I heard the name for the first time from her in Calcutta. Madam, I have just completed my write-up on Rita Levi-Montalcini. And what a work, what a person, died at the age of 104 years, the longest living Nobel laureate ever in the history in any subject. I just finished yesterday writing on her. What a work on nerve growth factor. My goodness. And that will see the light of the day in all likelihood in the Bangalore Conference of Indian Academy, which I have talked to Gaganji. Please carry on.
Thank you. So Dr. Achal, can you show the plaque, please?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So, sir, with due humility, virtually we're presenting you this plaque as a token of gratitude and honor for us having accepted the Meena Dhamija oration. And if
Thank you so much.
Dr. Dhamija is here, may I request Dr. Dhamija to kindly say a few words? Dr. Dhamija, are you there?
I'm really indebted to Kalyan, which I normally call him.
Yes, sir. How are you? How are you?
I'm fine,
for a
sir.
very long time.
Yeah, COVID is
very
keeping us away. Yeah, but I'm really grateful, and you have given an absolutely enormous, lecture, and I think everybody will be benefited. We should read about the history of everything in future also, if the time permits. I'm really thankful to you and my family is also very thankful to you for accepting this invitation from the DN.
It's lovely to see you. After a long time, I'm seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So with the permission of all, I close this session and